Welcome from the International Training Center at San Diego State University. I'm Dr. Michael Reel, the moderator for this teleconference. We are transmitting live via satellite from the studios of KPBS TV, the final of our 4 sessions on the topic of telecommunications for education and professional development. It is my pleasure to welcome all our participants today from Mexico, Panama, Costa Rica, Colombia, Paraguay, Brazil, Bolivia, Argentina, and of course those here in the United States. Today we welcome more than 90 participating sites and many leaders of business, government, and education. This series of video conferences is designed for the non-specialist interested in using learning technologies for success locally and globally. Before we begin, we would like to thank once again Telecomunicaciones de Mexico, PanamSat, and BrasilSat for their satellite linkage services, which have allowed us to reach all of you throughout 1995 through the wonders of telecommunications. As this is the last program in the series, we would also like to remind the coordinators at each receive site to collect the attendance sheets for your site and to return them to the International Training Center within 2 weeks. At this time, you should also return to us a list of names of participants interested in obtaining the certificate or diploma for this series of programs. Our topic today, video conferencing and interactive communications, technology and training. What is a teleconference? Well, it is precisely what we are all engaged in together today. It is people interacting at a distance through technology in real time. A teleconference can be as simple as a telephone conference call. But a video conference means visual and audio interaction through the communication medium of television. People hear and see and interact through audio-visual technology. This video conference calls for the collaboration of engineers, financiers, educators, and artists. It can be used by government and business for training, planning, or negotiating. It can also be used by schools for instruction and feedback. A video conference explodes the walls of the boardroom or classroom and opens an event to many thousands of participants separated by thousands of miles. Our expert today, Dr. Farhad Saba, will explain how to understand, plan, and operate successful video conferencing and telecommunication. Take today and this video conference as an example. Many months ago, planning began to arrange facilities, identify participants, and prepare materials. People are the most important component, of course. You in Jalisco, Veracruz, Sinaloa, Colima, Brazil, Argentina, and other downlink sites are the reason for this video conference. You must have satellite downlink receivers and television sets to be linked with us. We, in turn, must have television cameras and production facilities connected to our satellite uplink. Thus, between us today and connecting us are cameras, cables, microwave transmissions, satellites, and television receiver sets. There may also be optical fibers, compressed video, digital technology, and other components between us here in the KPBS TV studio and you in a given site. We also employ several satellite frequencies to provide for simultaneous translation. The crucial return link is by telephone lines for the transmission of voice messages, a phone question, and for the transmission of text in the case of a fax. There must be an effective link, return link, for any teleconference. Our event must be two-way, from here to you and from you back. For many of you, discussion of the communication technologies employed in teleconferencing is a review and reintegration of what you already know. For others, it may be a great deal of new, detailed information on technologies and applications. For still others, this may be an opportunity to convince your colleagues of what you already know, the techniques and advantages of video conferencing. Before we turn to our guest expert, let me note that the payoffs of video conferencing and telecommunication can be many. A huge amount of transportation cost and time can be saved. Instead of flying people from all over Latin America to a central location to study teleconferencing, this video conference can come to you, saving on airline tickets, hotel costs, and time lost away from work and teaching. Transportation can be replaced by telecommunication, not only saving resources, but also opening up the process to many additional participants who could never have flown to a central meeting place. As a consequence, telecommunication itself may appear expensive, but it often saves a much larger amount of money and increases the outreach of your activities. Teleconferencing may also improve student and employee morale, loyalty, and value, and it may improve the speed, quality, and ease of communication throughout your organization. Our specialist today, Dr. Farhad Saba, is an expert on video conferencing and interactive media. Dr. Saba, could you briefly indicate some of the specific organizations that you know of that have successfully employed teleconferencing and video conferencing?
Certainly. In business, I can mention Pacific Bell, the telephone company for most of the state of California, that in addition to businesses and industries, is connecting many schools together via ISDN technology and to us at San Diego State University. In education, I can mention Pennsylvania State University, a pioneer in the use of television in education and training that are using teleconferencing extensively. And in government, I can mention peace officer organizations such as the state police and highway patrol agencies throughout the United States that are using teleconferencing for training purposes.
We are fortunate to have Dr. Farhad Saba of the Department of Educational Technology at San Diego State University. He has wide experience in several countries and with many technologies and applications. Dr. Saba served as Managing Director of Educational Radio and Television in Iran from 1973 until 1978, and as the Telecommunications Division Director at the University of Connecticut from 1980 to 1984. With 20 years' experience in telecommunication-based education, he has been involved in design, implementation, evaluation, and policy analysis. He has also made presentations in France, Great Britain, Afghanistan, Indonesia, Malaysia, Switzerland, China, Turkey, and of course in Mexico and the United States. Dr. Saba is ideally suited to provide for us an overview of the different media available for teleconferencing and the ways these media can be put together for effective training and professional development. Following Dr. Saba's presentation, we will be accepting phone calls and faxes from receiving sites. Dr. Saba.
In our previous video teleconference, I described three primary video-based communication systems which are used in distance education today. These were broadcast television, compressed video or room video conferencing systems, and desktop video. To further simplify understanding of these technologies, we analyzed each of them in terms of three different subsystems: origination site subsystems, receiving site subsystems, and telecommunication subsystems. In broadcast television, similar to the one that you and I are using now in this video teleconference, I described two major categories of origination site equipment: small format television equipment with related video editing and post-production systems, and studio equipment, which consists of a production soundstage and a control room. For receiving site subsystems in broadcast television, I discussed various receivers that are needed depending on the type of broadcast signal and issues involved in talkback equipment to provide two-way interactive communication capability for the learners. In telecommunications for broadcasting, I presented and discussed several systems which included UHF and VHF, microwave transmission, cable television, and satellite transmission. In the time devoted to compressed video, I described the difference between analog and digital television and explained how digital television has brought down the cost of origination sites and receiving sites for video teleconferencing. One reason for the lower cost of room video conferencing systems is that the origination site requires a much less elaborate technical facility, and in many cases, the equipment installed in the origination site are identical to the ones you may find in the receiving site. Furthermore, I mentioned that with the advent of digital transmission standards such as ISDN or Integrated Services Digital Networks, it has become possible to send and receive interactive video teleconferences through ordinary twisted pair phone lines that are pervasive all over the world. Finally, we discussed the newest and the most recent technology, desktop video conferencing. These systems reside in a personal computer and provide for bidirectional interactive audio and video communications as well as for file sharing. Origination site and receiving site subsystems in this case are usually identical, and the medium of choice for telecommunications for such systems in North America has been ISDN. In conclusion, I mentioned several factors which would determine which one of these systems, broadcast, room video conferencing, or desktop video conferencing systems, you should select for your project. These were needs of the faculty for representing lessons in text, audio, video, and graphics, needs of the learner for voice, video, text, and graphics to interact with the faculty, availability and cost of equipment and services in your area, training time and effort required to prepare the faculty and students to use the equipment, and long-term viability of the system you intend to purchase. This summarizes what we discussed in our previous video conference. The present video conference is devoted to program design and management considerations for video teleconferencing. We will discuss this topic under the following categories: management issues, instructional design considerations, formative evaluation, summative evaluation, faculty presenter support, instructor skills, and receiving site management and considerations. Let's begin with management issues. In organizing for video teleconferencing for education and training, you need to consider the following. First, staffing. In organizing for video conferencing, 3 types of staff members are required: origination site management staff, program and production staff, and receiving site staff. Depending on the size and complexity of your project, you may need to hire new staff members or reassign some of your current staff members to manage the video conferencing effort. Some of the staff members may have to stay in your organization full-time to take care of daily activities. Others may be hired part-time only to carry certain tasks as the need may arise. For example, among your management staff, a producer and a marketing professional may have to be hired full-time to see that the video teleconference is produced and has reached its intended audience. On the other hand, presenters and the television production crew members should be involved in a part-time basis in the organization, unless you have such a high volume of production that you need to keep a video production crew, for instance, full-time. A well-trained and competent staff can be a great asset in managing the video conference with speed and efficiency. The time that you spend on selecting and training your staff is well worth the time and effort. Next, planning. Once the staff is on board, the next steps are to define specific goals, establish lines of responsibility, and to set timelines for the accomplishment of each task. Each staff member should have a specific goal to accomplish. For example, finding suitable receiving sites, making a list of potential expert presenters, and so on. I will outline these tasks later in this conference. Setting goals for each staff member also determines who is responsible for each task. Clarifying lines of responsibility at the outset will decrease the potential for confusion further down the road. Also, each staff member should be given a specific time to accomplish each of the assigned tasks. Setting timelines is important, since video teleconferencing is a time-sensitive activity. At a certain time, the conference must begin, so deadlines for each task must be determined in relation to the airtime. Budgeting. Video teleconferencing, depending on the size of the audience and its geographic area of coverage, can be a costly venture. Therefore, it is essential that a budget be drawn at the very early stage. The budget would include the cost of all the tasks which may have been outlined for the staff. For example, typical of these costs are purchasing or renting video teleconferencing equipment, telecommunication line charges, advertising and marketing, renting or using receiving sites, and other similar costs. If you are working for a client or even within your own organization, it is essential that whoever pays the bills have a clear idea of what the costs are and how those costs are going to be covered through a training budget or by charging the end user a tuition or a fee. Organizing. Once you have completed your staffing, planning, and budgeting, several tasks that are directly related to the organization of the teleconference should be accomplished. These tasks are determining receiving sites, selecting receiving site managers and instructional coordinators, organizing receiving sites, and developing mail and other delivery services to receiving sites for sending and receiving print materials, laboratory kits, tests, etc. If you are offering a credit course, you must develop a learner support system which may include a list of libraries as well as means of networking and mentoring for the participants. In organizing video teleconferences, primary attention is given by managers to the origination site to the point that, at times, receiving sites are neglected. We must remember that learning takes place in the receiving sites and must organize the entire conference from the point of view of the audience. Going back to the origination site, you need to select the moderator, instructors, and experts, select the telecommunication technology, reserve on-air or online time, reserve origination site and receiving site facilities, schedule the program, publicize the program among its intended audience, and develop the necessary contracts and financial agreements for the program. Once these tasks are accomplished, we can turn our attention to the instructional design and the content of the video conference. Designing the video teleconference is an important aspect of your task. The more time and effort you spend on design issues, the more you are assured that your video teleconference will meet the needs of the audience. Traditionally, instructional designers and distance educators have followed the model which you see on the screen to develop instructional materials and programs. The Instructional System Design Model, or ISD, consists of 4 major components: defining learning goals, developing media materials, presenting media materials, and evaluating the learner, the material, and the process. In the next few minutes, I will explain each of these components. First, defining learner goals. A primary means to define the learning goals for the intended audience is to conduct a needs assessment. Ask the audience what they need to know in order to increase the quality of performance, learn new skills, or develop new knowledge bases. Needs assessment, however, is not always adequate for determining learning needs. Novice learners, for example, may not be aware of what they need to know or to do. Therefore, a subject matter expert should also be consulted. Professionals and experts in each field often have a good view of the knowledge domain that the learner needs to acquire in order to achieve mastery in a certain area. A combination of needs assessment and subject matter analysis is therefore the optimal way to determine instructional goals. Second, developing media materials. Next step in the process is to develop and produce the media materials for the video teleconference. In many cases, the development stage begins with writing a script, a document which contains the content of the video teleconference. The best guide for determining the content are goals which have been selected for the learner. The content should directly relate to the goals of the video teleconference. The script also determines graphics and video segments which are needed to carry the content. Always keep in mind that video is a visual medium. The more graphics and video segments you include in the program, the better you can communicate with your audience. Developing media materials may take the talents of several people. In addition to your on-camera experts and moderator, many professionals work behind the scenes to make a video teleconference possible. For example, producers, a director, a video production crew consisting of camera persons, audio technicians, light technicians, etc., are working together at this very moment to make this teleconference possible. In addition to the video portion, video teleconference participants often are supported with print materials, such as the participant manual for today's video conference, handouts, vendor brochures, and booklets, which accentuate and support the message and content of each conference. Also, if the program is presented for gaining academic credit or professional certification, test materials also should be developed, such as an exam or evaluation. A main issue in management of distance education and training is making sure that these support materials reach the learner on time. We will visit this topic later in this program. Presenting media materials. Content of a video teleconference is usually presented by one or several on-camera experts. Very often, the expert has no prior experience with video conferencing. Therefore, a short training session is always helpful. The training session should make the presenter comfortable with the video camera and the studio lights, as well as working with the director and the technical crew. In such a training session, you should remind your presenter to be prepared for the amount of work that is involved in developing a video teleconference. Usually, preparing for a conference takes much more time than getting ready for classroom instruction or face-to-face presentation. Provide methods they need to present well on television. We will discuss these methods in detail in a short while. Discuss the experience of other on-camera experts with them. If you can, invite an experienced presenter who is familiar with your studio and crew to talk to new presenters. Show them examples of past projects and discuss how they can make their presentations as visual as possible. If communication is possible among participants in various receiving sites, ask the presenter to encourage such communication among them. Discuss how the presenter can increase his or her interaction with the audience. Give a tour of the origination site to on-camera experts and make them familiar with the studio and the technology that is used to produce and telecast the video teleconference. Discuss potential problems with the technology and how the on-camera expert can help in resolving them or explaining them to the audience once the problem has been cleared. Introduce the instructor or expert to the production staff and explain the role of each production crew member to him or her. Introduce the management staff to the on-camera expert and let he or she know what kind of information the staff needs in order to pay for his or her service. Be prompt in arriving on the day of the conference. The program must start on time. Write their material in advance so they can use a teleprompter. When using a teleprompter, maintain an appropriate level of spontaneity, use a natural tone of voice, speak slowly, and enunciate each word. Use visuals during the program to highlight important points. Use frequent changes of pace to keep the audience interested. Draw the audience into a discussion as much as possible. Provide structure for the content. Provide structure for learner activity during and after the program. Set an appropriate pace depending on your audience response. Recover from technical problems and mishaps by explaining briefly to the audience what happened and how the technicians were able to resolve the problem. The on-camera expert also requires certain presentation skills and information that is directly related to the medium of television. For example, look into the eye of the camera if he or she would like to have eye contact with the audience. Talking to the lens of the camera may require some practice, but it adds a lot to the effectiveness of the program and the ability of the on-camera talent to establish rapport with the audience. Agree on a set of hand signals with the television studio floor manager for cueing the on-camera expert on remaining time, speaking to the eye of the camera, and communicating with the director. Smile and project a pleasant image. Avoid wearing bright colors such as white or yellow. The best colors for television are blue and green. The worst colors are red and white. Avoid wearing flashy jewelry as they may glare under the lights of a television studio and may be distracting to the audience in certain circumstances when two-way communication is readily available and your audience can directly talk to the on-camera expert. He or she should encourage audience participation. For example, they should use humor, if appropriate, to break the ice and establish rapport with the audience. Create a sense of shared space with your audience. For example, ask them how the weather is in their location and describe to them the weather conditions at your location. Invite questions from the audience. Call upon individual members of the audience by name as much as possible. Provide feedback to the audience. Listen to the audience carefully when they ask a question. It is always a good idea to have paper and pencil ready to write down the questions. Now we will discuss evaluation, the learner, the materials, and the process. Evaluation and quality assurance in education and training is perhaps the hottest issue at the present time. Video teleconferencing is an involved process. It takes many people to produce and deliver a conference. As such, depending on the complexity of the video conference and the number of sites and students, the origination site, company, or government agency may incur a lot of expenses in production and delivery of a single or a series of video teleconferences. Also, participating agencies, government organizations, educational institutions, and private companies have a stake in the outcomes and the process. They invariably have to give free time to their employees to participate in a video teleconference. This means that at least during the conference, the employees' productivity may go down. So in addition to the fees and tuition to participate in a conference, employee downtime also puts a financial burden on the participating agencies and institutions. Therefore, it is important to evaluate not only the instructional outcomes of the conference, but also the management process which made it possible. To ensure quality in video teleconferencing, two types of evaluation are conducted: formative evaluation and summative evaluation. A formative evaluation is conducted while you are in the process of developing the video conference. It is to help the writers, on-camera presenters, graphic artists, and other program personnel to increase the quality of the video teleconference as it is developed. For example, it is always helpful to ask a sample representative of the audience if the portion of the script that has been completed has met their expectations as far as its content and treatment of the subject is concerned. The graphics are legible and its vocabulary understandable. The pre-recorded video segments are well produced and meet professional standards. The print materials, handouts, and other supplements to the video teleconference are adequate to do the job. Formative evaluation is time-consuming and at times can be expensive, but it is an essential part of the development process for video teleconferencing. It provides an invaluable source of information which can reduce the possibility of failure dramatically. The more information collected during the formative evaluation process, the more the likelihood of success. It increases the chance for receiving good reviews during the summative evaluation from the audience and other stakeholders. A major factor in the success of formative evaluation is a thorough needs assessment. In fact, some consider needs assessment a part of the formative evaluation process. As the video teleconference is developing, you should also keep an eye on the calendar and the budget. Although going over the timelines and the set budget is not necessarily a sign of poor quality, they are good indicators that something is wrong in the system and should be corrected. Another factor is analyzing policies and procedures you have set previously and reviewing them with a critical eye. This means considering new alternatives as you gain more experience in organizing and delivering video teleconferences. Reviewing policies and procedures inevitably entails monitoring